So, I've been teasing this all day, and it's time now before I start heading back to the truck to talk about this. In 2016 and 17, we did a telemetry study on shoal bass in this stream, along with another one about 35 miles north of here. And I'll tell you, if you ever want to know or want to have your horizons expanded about what fish will or will not do, can and cannot do, a telemetry study is humbling. We think sometimes that we know all there is to know about bass behavior and bass movement and what bass will do and what they won't do. But boy, I'm telling you what, I have done telemetry studies on a variety of fish species, not just bass. But every one of your, almost all of your preconceived notions go right out the window once you put tags on fish and see what they actually do. So here, we put tags in 20 shoal bass in the fall of 2016. We intentionally did not put anywhere near this waterfall area because I knew that if they went over it, which I expected them to do if we got them too close to here, they would never come back. They'd be down here forever and they'd be essentially out of the study. Those tags are $150 a piece, so you don't want to just throw them out the window and throw data out the window. So the nearest that they've got any fish was tagged to here was about 2 miles upstream, and most of them were tagged 10 to 15 miles upstream from here. So they tracked them throughout the fall into the early spring. The shoal bass did kind of what they usually do, and then they started moving. A couple of them started moving down a little closer. They got below that bridge that I put in at, and that was starting to get us a little nervous. And then sure enough, my student shows up here, tracks the fish. One of them has gone over the waterfall and is down here in this area where I am right now. So it somehow navigated its way over, a 15, 20-foot waterfall and was now down here. And we're like, well, that's one fish that's out of the study, because quite frankly, when you're trying to track two streams at the same time and you're tracking them every week and it takes you 2 or 3 days to cover the entire creek, you really don't have time to come down all the way down here, get out of the boat, navigate through here at high water sometimes. It's dangerous too. So we just considered if they went out over the waterfall, they were out of the study. About 2 weeks later, maybe 3, she was tracking the fish again, and that fish that was down here was now upstream of the waterfall, upstream of the bridge even, and just acting like nothing had ever happened. And we're like, oh my God, how in the heck did a bass get back up over this thing? Are you kidding me? I can barely get myself up over this thing. And then, I think maybe even the very next time she went to go track, that fish, it was back down here again. And about 2 weeks after that, it was back upstream above the bridge again. And so it did it a second time just to prove that it wasn't a fluke. Now, there's questions, some folks have questions, and I had them too, in a way, well, why did someone just catch the fish and feel sorry for it and take it upstream and put it above there? Now, first of all, why in the world would anyone do that? But second of all, again, I fished here. I fished here mostly in the fall for a very good reason, because there's a lot more water moving through here in the spring. This place, it is very difficult to move around. It is not easy to move around. It is hard to move above these waterfalls when the flow is going over top of them with yourself, wading boots, and a fanny pack, and a fishing rod. The thought that someone was pulling a 4-pound shoal bass with them up over that seems almost impossible. And the fact that they would do it again just a couple weeks later, nah. That is almost certainly not the case. That fish navigated above this somehow and acted like it was no big deal. And I'll tell you, we always knew shoal bass moved. We had previous research from the Flint River in the upper part where there's no dams, and we had fish move, 15 to 20 miles to spawn during the telemetry study part of that study. And then as far as the regular angler caught tags, we found fish moving as much as 160 miles to spawn, to reach spawning areas, and then dispersing back to where they came from. So we knew they could move. Now the upper Flint has a lot of shoals in it. The biggest one being Yellow Jacket Shoals, where the whole river drops 40 feet in a mile. But 40 feet in a mile is not exactly the same as 75 feet in a half a mile with vertical waterfalls. There are no real vertical waterfalls on the Flint. Those shoals are pretty gnarly, but they're nothing like a waterfall. And we were impressed to think that this fish would swim upstream 60 miles, reach Yellow Jacket Shoals, go right over Yellow Jacket Shoals, and keep going to over 2 more shoals and show up at flat shoals at the top. We thought that was really impressive, but we never would have thought that shoal bass or any bass could possibly navigate an honest-to-God waterfall. And so that was an eye-opening, game-changing moment where the perception of this animal changed on a dime. This is a fish, as I've said before, is more like a salmon than it is like a bass. Smallmouth bass don't do this. Spotted bass don't do this. Lord knows largemouth bass don't do this. Red-eye bass, as far as we know, don't do this, although they do move some. But somehow shoal bass find a way over these falls, just like a salmon would. And just as a sideline to that, a few years ago I was at a get-together, and I ran into 2 chaps who fish this area, and they fish it more than I do. And he was telling me that he and this guy, both of whom I know and definitely trust, that they have sat here on these shoals during higher water, although not super high water, because then you wouldn't be able to see anything, and they have seen shoal bass jump over ledges and get up over and make their way above these shoals or these waterfalls when the water's high enough. And that is just unbelievable to me. But I've seen evidence of this in some of the other streams where like what I'm looking at right now, in this river right now, there's no water between that lower ledge and that upper ledge. But I've seen situations in these streams where there's little pools that are up above these ledges, and there'll be a fish spawning in them. And they got up there somehow, and they didn't walk. So I could see how this could work. But again, we're used to seeing pictures of salmon jumping up waterfalls. We're not used to thinking that bass would do the same thing. And I don't believe that shoal bass quite do it the same way salmon do, where the salmon are going up literally like that area right there. You will see salmon trying to jump in the air. I seriously doubt the shoal bass are doing that. But instead, they're finding areas where they can just make a series of smaller jumps or runs up a chute and eventually pick their way up above that thing. And that alone is truly astounding. If anybody thought that bass could do that before you see this video, well, congratulations, sir, or ma'am, because nobody in the science community ever thought that was possible. So this was truly a watershed moment in our understanding of shoal bass and how they interact to their environment, and also a great window into why damming up the Chattahoochee had such a negative impact on this particular fish. This is a really special place. The fishing can be good. It's not usually awesome, quite frankly, but the fishing is pretty good. The scenery is unbelievable, but I'll tell you, just the experience of bass fishing in the middle of a waterfall complex is just an experience that you cannot comprehend until you do it. And this fish has shown that name, that Jim Williams, the guy who described the shoal bass as a species, that name that Jim gave this species back in 1999 was more appropriate than any of us know. It truly, truly is the bass of the waterfalls.